Hello, everyone. There are folks still joining the webinar, so we'll give them another minute to settle in. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the Doors annual reporting webinar. We wanted to let you know that chat is disabled. If you have any questions, please send them through the Q&A feature. Before we start, I do want to remind you that the off-road regulation was amended in 2022, and the amended regulatory requirements took effect beginning January 1st, 2024. On January 3, 2025, the United States Environmental Protection Agency granted CARB an authorization request for the 2022 in-use off-road diesel-fueled fleets regulation amendments. CARB staff will soon publish an advisory informing fleets on the next steps and impact on compliance requirements. The amendments include requiring the use of renewable diesel, introducing new contracting requirements, phasing out the operation of the oldest and dirtiest off-road diesel vehicles, incorporating new low-use requirements, expanding the ban on adding some dirtier vehicles, and providing flexibility options to encourage the adoption of zero-emission technology. Under the renewable diesel requirements, there are cold weather exemptions available. They are for those fleets and areas with specific temperature requirements. If you have any questions, please reach out to the Doors hotline at 877-593-6677 or send us an email to doors@arb.ca.gov. We also have informational sessions on the 2022 amendments. 504 Training and Initial Reporting User Guide. My name is Marjorie, and I work for the Off-Road Implementation section at the California Air Resources Board, CARB. Before we get started, I want to let you know that a recording of the Doors annual reporting webinar will be posted on the Off-Road Zone website, so you can always go back and review the material that is presented. The webinar today is designed for diesel equipment owners who have already entered their vehicle or equipment information into the Doors system. If you are just starting your compliance journey and need to learn about the regulation requirements, please check out ARB's free 504 training, which provides detailed information to help fleet owners understand and comply with the off-road regulation. If you're completely new to the Doors reporting system and the off-road diesel regulation, I would suggest that you continue to follow along, but you will need to complete the initial reporting process first. You can find the initial reporting user guide in the off-road zone under Doors Resources. Today, I will be providing instructions for navigating and completing the annual reporting indoors. There are two sides of Doors, a side for off-road diesel vehicles and a side for large spark ignition LSI vehicles. We will only be going over the off-road diesel side of Doors and its annual reporting requirements for the off-road diesel regulation. As a reminder, the LSI reporting requirements are sunsetting and being replaced by the Zero Emission Forklift ZEF regulation, which was approved on June 27, 2024. ZEF imposes restrictions on the sale and operation of LSI forklifts, with phase-out requirements extending through 2038. Please visit the ZEF webpage for more information. Let's get started. If you have any questions that are specific to your fleet, it will be easier for you to call the Doors hotline after the webinar so that staff can take a look at your fleet and doors and provide individual assistance. What will be covered? In this webinar, we will cover annual reporting requirements, changes from the 2022 amendments, logging into your Doors account, reporting changes to your fleet, reporting annual hour logs, submitting the Renewable Diesel Affirmation, and submitting the e-roar or the hard copy roar. This webinar should take less than an hour. Vehicle bans and phase-out schedules. First, let's go over the more stringent requirements from the 2022 amendments. In effect, only Tier 4 final or cleaner engines can be added to your fleet after your deadline, and Tier 0, 1, and 2 engines will have to be phased out of operation over a 12-year schedule. The amendments require fleets to phase out Tier 0, 1, and 2 engines, with large fleets having to remove Tier 0s starting on January 1st, 2024. Annual reporting requirements. As part of the reporting requirements for the in-use off-road diesel-fueled fleets regulation, off-road regulation, fleets are required to report updates to their fleet of vehicles annually. Updates must be made within 30 days of taking actions such as purchasing, selling, and retiring. This is a requirement for all self-propelled off-road diesel vehicles with a maximum horsepower of 25 or greater that do not meet any of the exemptions stated in the regulation language. You are also required to submit a form called the Responsible Official Affirmation of Reporting, or the ROAR. It is an affirmation that your fleet is reported accurately and is meeting the requirements of the regulation. The ROAR must be submitted annually between January 1st and March 1st. The new renewable diesel affirmation is to be submitted as part of the ROAR. Failure to submit the ROAR by the deadline or not submitting the ROAR at all could lead to potential enforcement action. If you miss the deadline, it is important to still submit your ROAR as soon as possible. We do date stamp received documents, but if for some reason you are not able to get all your reporting documents submitted by March 1st, you should know that it is much better to submit your reporting documents late than never submitting them at all. Even if there are no vehicles reported in your Doors account, if you have an account and company still set up in Doors, you need to submit a ROAR. You are affirming that you have no off-road diesel vehicles currently, but you may have these vehicles in the future. Therefore, you want to keep your account active. If you have any credits from previous actions on your fleet, these may still be used for future compliance. Next, I want to go over the regulation language itself. This is text pulled from the off-road regulation. To summarize, it says fleets must review and update their information and submit their ROAR. Section 2449G2, Annual Reporting and Responsible Official Affirmation of Reporting. All fleet owners must review and update the information submitted under Section 2449G1 annually and submit the information in Section 2449G2A through C to CARB by the reporting date of each subsequent reporting year. The reporting date for all fleets is March 1st. Fleet owners must report information regarding each vehicle subject to this regulation as it was on December 31st of the year prior to the reporting year. Logging into Doors. The first step to annual reporting is logging into your Doors account. This is often the most difficult part of the whole process. People lose passwords, old staff has left the company, and so you have no idea what it is. I will show you how to log into Doors and how to retrieve your password if you cannot figure out what it is. The main point I want to stress on this topic is you do not want to create a new Doors account. Creating a new Doors account would result in your vehicles being into the system twice, and you ultimately become out of compliance on the fleet that becomes out of date. Starting from a search engine like Google, you can find the Doors login page in multiple ways. One way is to search Carb Doors Login. The first things that come up will most likely be associated with the login page or give you a jumping off point. The login page is also easily accessible from the CARB Off-Road Zone webpage, which has a lot of useful resources for off-road fleets. It's a good idea to bookmark either or both of these pages. Once you find the login page, you will simply enter your username and password. If you don't have this information, click on the Forgot Your Username and Password link. If you know your username and email associated with the account, enter the two fields and the password will be sent to your email address. If you don't know your username or email, you will need to either call the Doors hotline for assistance or you will need to complete the Changing Contact Information form. It is important that you fill this form out with the correct responsible official name and signature. The form will be denied if signed by the wrong person. The form asks for the signature of the responsible official of the company. This should be designated in your Doors account on your owner information page. If the old responsible official has left the company or you are not sure who might have been listed as the responsible official, you need to include a letter on company letterhead stating that the person who signed the form is the new responsible official. You can bypass sending a letter if the new responsible official has the email domain that corresponds with the business email domain. For example, if I work for ABC Construction and my email address is marjorie@abcconstruction.net, all I have to do is complete the form correctly and email it to Doors. If you have a generic email such as at Gmail or at yahoo.com, you'll have to attach the letter along with the form. Alternatively, this form can be completed by the designated official. The designated official is a person who's been designated by the responsible official as the person that represents the fleet. And there is a separate form to assign a designated official, which we will go over later in the webinar. If all else fails, call the Doors hotline and we can tell you what steps you need to take to retrieve your login information. Often, it's as simple as confirming some information in your Doors account and we can provide your login information. Again, do not create a new account just because you can't remember your information. Reporting changes to your fleet. Now that you have logged into your Doors, and before you submit your ROAR, you need to make sure your Doors fleet is completely up to date in the system. Now, this is what the ROAR form is all about. You're affirming that you have reported everything correctly indoors. There are several things you want to review before you submit the ROAR. Account information, owner information, vehicle information, annual hour logs, adding new equipment and selling, retiring old equipment, compliance with the new tier phase-out schedule, new record-keeping requirements. From Doors Home, the first thing we are going to check is our Edit Account page on the top right. This is where you can assign the contact person. The contact person can be anyone associated with the account. Just someone who has access and who will be checking his or her email for notices. Basically, whoever's in charge of keeping the doors account up to date. Also, there's a table at the bottom of this page if you want to change your password. Next, we are going to the owner information page. From the owner information page, check all fields for accuracy, go down all the way, and make sure the information is up to date and correct. Here you can designate the responsible official, which is important. You want to make sure all the information is correct and up to date. Defining the responsible official. The responsible official is the person ultimately responsible for the vehicles in this fleet. That will be the owner or partner of a sole proprietorship or partnership, or the president, secretary, treasurer, vice president, or a similar person in charge of a principal business function, or a public agency. It means either a principal executive officer or a ranking elected official. For those that are reporting on behalf of someone else or a company, the designated official form might be something you want to submit to us. It is a form that you can have your responsible official sign, and then going forward, the designated official will be able to sign on their behalf for forms such as the ROAR. The next thing we are going to do is check the vehicle and engine page. Scroll to the bottom and review your list of vehicles. Ask yourself a few questions. Have you sold or retired any vehicles on this list? Have you purchased any vehicles that are subject to this regulation that have not yet been added into doors? You need to make sure this list of diesel off-road vehicles matches what you own in real life. To sell or retire vehicles, click on the Sell/Retire button and enter the date of the sale. To add vehicles to your fleet, either enter the EIN and purchase date, in the first table, if the vehicle already has an EIN. I want to back up a little. An EIN stands for Equipment Identification Number. It's what you see off-road equipment labeled with. It will have a red label with a white number letter combination, or a green label if you are in a captive attainment area. To add a vehicle that does not have an EIN, for example, a new vehicle or one from out of state, use the second, more extensive table. You'll need to enter the vehicle and engine information that applies to your equipment to generate an EIN that Doors will provide. Adding zero-emission equipment to a fleet provides new compliance benefits. Adding a zero-emission replacement of an older, dirtier piece of equipment will allow the equipment, subject to the phase-out schedule, an additional 2-year phase-out delay. The replacement of diesel equipment with zero-emission equipment of 15% of the fleet by 2030, then the replacement of 50% of the fleet by 2035 will allow a fleet to be compliant under an alternative compliance pathway. Now that our doors fleet is completely up to date, we're going to check to see if we need to report any hour meter readings. Reporting annual hour logs. Some fleets will have vehicles that have been designated as low use, which means operating less than 200 hours in California for the year. Please note that as of January 1st, 2024, the year-by-year low use designation is no longer available. and the only low use provision is permanent low use. There are also fleets that operate vehicles that run more than half of the time for agricultural purposes, but not completely 100%. Both of these designations require annual hour meter readings to be submitted in order for them to be considered exempt from the performance requirements. You have to report hour meter readings if you claim any of these special designations, and you will not be able to submit your ROR if you have not submitted the required information. If you do not have these designations, you are not required to submit hour meter readings to DOORS. Next, we're selecting the low use page at the top of your screen. On this page, you can see which of your vehicles have the low use designation. Before we start reporting our hours, I do want to spend some time going over the low use designation because we get many questions and there can be some confusion around reporting hours. First, I want to clarify that you are not required to place vehicles in low use. It's just a compliance options that some fleets choose. Another thing I want to clarify is that you're only required to enter hours for vehicles designated as low use or ag. If the vehicle in your fleet is not designated as ag or low use, we do not require you to submit hour meter readings. Next, let's discuss the different types of low use. Permanent and permanent outside. The difference between permanent low use and permanent outside low use is that permanent low use means a vehicle that operated exclusively in California less than 200 hours per year, while permanent outside low use are vehicles that operate both inside and outside of California, but they are used less than 200 hours per year in the state of California. When a vehicle is put into either of the low use options, that vehicle gets excluded from the fleet average calculation. Fleets may also earn back credits from vehicles in the low use designation. But if the vehicle exceeds its less than 200-hour limit, the vehicle must be removed from the fleet entirely unless it meets the adding vehicles requirement. Also, please remember if you are designated a vehicle as low use, it must have a functioning, permanently affixed, non-resettable hour meter. You can report an hour meter replacement here using this button. To record the hours, we will click on the Low Use Hour Meter Readings button. Here, we will enter the hour meter readings for the low-use vehicle in 2024. Select the vehicle, go to the pull-down menu, we will select YU3X64. Compliance Year 2024 and click Go. One thing to keep in mind is that the previous year's ending hours should be the same as the beginning hours for the year we are reporting for. So the ending 2023 hour meter reading should be the same number as the beginning 2024 hour meter reading. Also, make sure to enter your hours for both columns before you click Save, otherwise you'll get an error. Once completed, click Submit to save your engine hours. Next is the outside low use hours. We're going to go ahead and using the pull down menu, we are going to select JJ3P53, compliance year 2024, and click Go. You'll notice reporting permanent outside low use hours is different from permanent low use. And this is because you have the ability to submit multiple entries in the event you entered and exited California multiple times throughout the year. Click on the Report Hours button. Enter the dates and hours and click Submit. In case you made a mistake, you can delete the entry by clicking the blue Delete button. If your vehicle did not enter California, you can check the box up top and enter the beginning and end of the year readings and click Submit. I want to mention that the 2025 hour meter reading is available for the permanent outside low use designation, so a fleet can keep track of their hours throughout the year. Keep in mind we'll only need 2024 hour meter readings to complete the annual report this year, and that the 2025 hour meter reading is just available as a tracking tool. Before we move on to the next section, I'd like to mention some of the requirements for low use. The 2022 amendments expanded the reporting requirements to include a date stamp photograph of the engine hour meter reading. Fleets must maintain the photograph in accordance with the record-keeping requirements, and it must be made available to CARB when requested. To report the agricultural hour log, first we click the agricultural page. Enter the readings for January 1st, 2024, and the reading for December 31st, 2024. Then in the third column, you will enter the hours the vehicle was used for ag purposes. And the fourth column, you'll enter the hours used for non-ag purposes. If you exclusively use this vehicle for ag purposes, you would enter 0 in this fourth field. If the number here adds up to the difference between the starting hours and the ending hours, that means you never used it for ag purposes, and therefore it does not meet the requirements of this designation. So if this number is 50, you did not meet the 51 to 99% ag designation because you are telling us that you use this vehicle only 50% of the time for ag purposes. If this number is 0, it means that you only use this exclusively for ag operations. Please always fill out the last column, even if it is 0, so doors can record the hours correctly without errors. And lastly, click Submit 2024 hours to save. Renewable diesel affirmation. A new renewable diesel affirmation has been added to the EROR process. The renewable diesel affirmation can be accessed at two locations, one at the top row of the buttons named RD Affirmation next to the EROR button, or from clicking the link for renewable diesel affirmation requirements within the EROR checklist page. It is number 8 on the EROR checklist. Here you are affirming compliance with the renewable diesel affirmation. When you have read and understand the renewable diesel requirements, you may check the first box. When you're ready to request a renewable diesel affirmation PIN, you may check the second box. Then click the Request the Electronic Signature PIN box and proceed to the Form button. While on the renewable diesel affirmation form, check the first box if you are in compliance with the renewable diesel requirements. Check the second box if you are renting equipment and are in compliance with the renewable diesel requirements, or if you qualify for any renewable diesel exemptions such as captive attainment, clean technology fleet, unavailability of renewable diesel, or cold temperature operations. Check the appropriate boxes. Retrieve your PIN from the email, type in your PIN, and then hit Submit. Even though the renewable diesel affirmation is submitted, fleets must comply with the renewable diesel record-keeping requirements for 3 years. Submitting the EROR. Now that you have ensured your fleet information is up to date and you have submitted your renewable diesel affirmation and any required hour logs, you are ready to submit your ROAR. First, I will instruct you on how to submit an electronic ROAR. You can submit your ROAR simply by logging into your Doors account. After I go over this process, I will show you how to submit a hard copy ROAR form. This will be your method if you are unable to submit electronically. We highly recommend the electronic submittal of the EROR for quicker processing. There are 5 main steps to submitting the EROR. Complete the EROR checklist, check the box, request a personal identification number, PIN, retrieving your PIN from your email, enter your PIN, and click Submit. While indoors, we will click on the green EROR button at the top of the screen. The ROAR requirement page will appear with a checklist of requirements. Green checks are good, showing completed items. Red X's are items that need to be completed. Yellow yield means your fleet is not in compliance with the low use amendments. Please change the designation of your year-by-year low use vehicles. Review the ROAR requirements checklist. Once all the boxes have green checks, we can proceed. You will likely have a red X for line 1B, and all you need to do is run the compliance snapshot by clicking the embedded link. I've already run the compliance snapshot because it takes time to open up due to the calculations running. Go back to the EROR page. We're ready to submit our ROAR. Check the box next to the statement affirming you are reporting electronically. Then click Request PIN and proceed to EROR page. A PIN number will be emailed to the responsible official's email and the designated official's email that are listed in Doors, and that's why you want to make sure those are up to date. Enter the PIN and hit Submit. Your ROAR is completed for the year. If you want to obtain your compliance certificate, you can click here or click on the Other Tools page at the top of your Doors account. Click on Certificate of Reported Compliance. You can view and print your compliance certificate. For a project involving the use of vehicles subject to the regulation, the prime contractor or public works awarding body must obtain copies of the valid certificate of reported compliance for the fleets and subcontractors that are listed in the contract. Submitting hard copy, renewable diesel, and ROAR. Now that we've submitted the electronic ROAR, we will go over how to submit a hard copy form in order to fulfill your ROAR requirements. Keep in mind, you only need to submit the ROAR either electronically or hard copy, not both. You will still need to log into your Doors account and make sure that your information is up to date. You need to review the owner information and make sure your contact information is up to date. You will also need to review your vehicles list and update if you have sold or retired any vehicles or if you have added any vehicles to your off-road diesel fleet. Again, we highly recommend submitting your ROAR electronically for quicker processing and assistance. When you submit a hard copy ROAR form through mail, CARB staff manually checks your Doors fleet online and makes sure your fleet is complete. Your ROAR form will be rejected and CARB staff will respond by email if you have filled out the form incorrectly or if you have not completed steps in your Doors account. Please note, processing of ROAR forms submitted via mail is slower and fax is unavailable. The quickest way to reach us is through email. To get to the hard copy ROAR form, click on the eROAR page. On the bottom of this page, you'll see the PDF link. You need to make sure you fill in every section of this form and have the correct person sign the form. A majority of hard copy ROAR forms are denied the first time around, usually because they have a signature from the wrong person or the incorrect reporting year, or they check the box for captive attainment when it doesn't apply. Captive attainment means areas of California that have better air quality. Therefore, those fleets are treated as small fleets. If you are captive attainment, you need to designate it as such on your owner information page. If the checkbox does not match what is in your Doors account, we will deny the form. For more definitions, you can also check out page 2 and 3 of the form. Yes, the reporting year is 2025. We understand that this can be confusing because you are reporting your information from 2024. However, the reporting year refers to the year we are submitting the ROAR, so it will be 2025 this year. When you have completed this form correctly, you will sign it with a handwritten signature, scan it, and email it to the Doors email address. A lot of forms get denied for signing digitally. Please know that we can only accept physical, wet signatures for all forms. But none of you will need to do this form because you will be pros at the eROAR. If you need more resources to help with your annual reporting and rule requirements, you can visit the off-road zone. And before I wrap up here, I would like to take a quick look at the off-road zone. Again, using any search engine, type in CARB off-road zone. We have our Doors resources. We have user guides and reporting forms, the regulation FAQs, and this last box here we have training and events. This is where you can find different trainings and register for them. Also, down at the very bottom, we have some helpful links like Doors login, EIN labeled vendors list, fleet average calculator, and the off-road certification database in case you are looking for an executive order. Here, you can sign up for email updates to stay up to date on any changes to the regulation. This concludes the webinar. We will be staying on for another 10 to 15 minutes so you can ask any other questions you may have. Type your question in the Q&A section. Also feel free to call the hotline or send an email to Doors. Thank you for your participation and have a wonderful day.